Attila the Hun. Also widely identified with the Scythians and Gog and Magog were the Huns, a nomadic people who lived in Central Asia, the Caucasus, and Eastern Europe between the 4th and 6th century AD. The contents of the Syriac legend of Alexander, describing Alexander's exploits in the land of the rising sun, are summarized in a brief introductory heading. An exploit by Alexander, the son of Philip the Macedonian, how he went forth to the ends of the world, and made a gate of iron, and shut it in the face of the north wind, that the Huns might not come forth to spoil the countries, from the manuscripts in the house of the kings of Alexandria. 73. According to the conclusion of the Syriac legend of Alexander, which has no corresponding part in the Quran, after he the wall built to keep out Gog and Magog, Alexander put an inscription on it containing a prophecy for events to follow his lifetime, that were given precise dates. The first announced that after 826 years, the Huns will break through the gate and plunder the lands. Then, after 940 years, God would gather together the kings and their hosts and will give a signal to break down the wall, and the armies of the Huns, Persians, and Arabs will fall upon each other, after which the kingdom of the Romans will enter this fray, conquer them all. Already in 1890, Theodore Nolde calculated the dates according to the Seleucid era, and determined that 826 years later corresponded to 514 to 15 AD, precisely when the Sabir Huns forced their way through the middle pass of the Caucasus into Armenia, Cappadocia, and northern Mesopotamia. 74. And as Van Bladel has indicated, Greek and Armenian sources show that these real invasions were interpreted in apocalyptic terms and associated with Gog and Magog. 75. In his commentary on Ezekiel, Saint Jerome, c. 342, c. 347 to 420, who was forced to leave Palestine after the onslaught of the Huns, references Jewish tradition about Gog and Magog to combine it with the Messianic age of Book of Revelation. According to Jerome, the Jews think that Gog is a Scythian nation, immense and innumerable, which extend beyond the Caucasus Mountains and the Sea of Azov, and through the Caspian Sea to India. 76. After having reigned for 1,000 years, explains Jerome, Gog and Magog, who had been enclosed by Alexander the Great, will be stirred up by the devil, gather many peoples and attack Palestine to fight against the saints. 77. By 370 AD, the Huns had arrived on the Volga, and by 430 AD they established a vast, but short-lived, dominion in Europe, conquering the Goths and many other Germanic peoples living outside of Roman borders, and causing many others to flee into Roman territory. Likewise, according to Isidore of Seville, c. 560 to 636 AD, in his History of the Kings of the Goths, Vandals, and Suevi, the Goths were also descendants of Gog and Magog. It is certain that the Goths are a very old nation. Some conjecture from the similarity of the last syllable that the origin of their name comes from Magog, son of Japheth, and they deduce this mostly from the work of the prophet Ezekiel. Formerly, however, the learned were accustomed to call them Geti rather than Gog and Magog. The interpretation of their name in our language is tekti, protected, which connotes strength, and with truth, for there has not been any nation in the world that has harassed Roman power so much. For these are the people who even Alexander declared should be avoided. 78. In the late 4th century AD, the lands of the Goths were invaded from the east by the Huns. While several groups of Goths came under the domination of the Huns, others migrated further west or sought refuge within the Roman Empire. Goths who entered the empire by crossing the Danube inflicted a devastating defeat against the Romans at the Battle of Adrianople in 378 AD. These Goths would become known as the Visigoths, and under their king Alaric I, c. 370 to 410 AD, they began a long migration, eventually establishing a Visigothic kingdom in Spain at Toledo. In the 5th century, Goths under the rule of the Huns gained their independence. Known as the Ostrogoths, under their king Theodoric the Great, 454 to 526 AD, they established an Ostrogothic kingdom in Italy at Ravenna. the Huns, especially under Attila, c. 406 to 453 AD, made devastating raids into the eastern part of the Roman Empire. In 451 AD, the Huns invaded Gaul, where they fought a combined army of Romans and Visigoths at the Battle of the Catalaunian Fields, and in 452 AD they invaded Italy.